It's Sobe, what do we got coming on?
Well, as you guys know, tonight is a special night. We are closing out how to not date.
That's right.
So we think it's amazing, in order to close this series, to do it with a Q&A. And so, if you guys can get excited with us, I'm going to introduce our panel. They're going to come to the stage. We're going to move into our Q&A panel for how not to date.
How not to date.
How
there
not
it
to
is.
date.
There it is.
As they come up to the stage, we have our panelists. And I am Sobe. I will be your panel moderator. I'll be going through the questions. But as they come up, can we guys give a round of applause to our panelists? They're going to introduce themselves in a little bit. We're going to hear a little bit about their status, because these people up here have a wealth of information and wisdom and knowledge that you guys don't even understand. And so, as we mentioned earlier in the service, we had the QR code, and the link is still available. And as we are going through, you're able to keep adding questions. We're going to try to get through all of them, but the better thing is to really upvote those questions that we already have on there if you don't see a unique question to yourself. We were just making sure you're awake. All right. All right. So as we get ready to start, how you guys doing? I was just trying to make sure you guys are awake and alive for this. All right. So we love getting to do this because we love being able to answer your questions. And so with me, as you guys know, most of them, you're familiar with all of them. But I wanted to take a moment to have you guys actually kind of introduce yourselves and share your status so the people in the crowd know, like, these experts up here. So can you start us off? Like, what's your relationship status? That's what I meant to say.
My relationship status.
Who are
Like
you?
your
What's your
name.
relationship
Okay, my name is
status?
Dina.
Yeah.
I'm Dina Comer. My relationship status is married.
For how long?
For 37 years in June. 36, almost
go.
37 years this June. Yes, that's my status.
30 years of experience and knowledge in marriage.
Yes, yes.
My name is Josh. This May, I'll have been married 13 years, which is also crazy.
Yes.
Crazy.
You're getting
Yeah.
old.
I am getting old. My wife and I, we dated for almost 2 years. We were engaged about 6 months, and we've been married 13 years.
Thank you. Good for us to know.
My name is Andrew. I will have been married 8 years this June. My wife and I, we dated for about 6 months. No, 7 months. We were engaged for about 5 months, and we got married within a year of meeting each other. I know.
And how long you been married for?
Be 8 years this June.
All right.
My name is Rebecca, and this August, I will complete 37 years of being single.
Let's go.
Rebecca.
That's it.
So I get to live a life of purpose and mission, but doing it with the Lord,
Yes.
Him and I.
Yes. I'm with you. 33 years of singleness here as well. So the reason why we share all that is to give you guys an idea of, like, who's up here, and the people up here, I think they're going to know what they're talking about as we go through these questions. And so, as I've mentioned, we're going to try to go through as many. We're going to try to go through some of the ones that are being upvoted. And so, for our first question that actually jumped to the top I'm making sure I'm getting the most up to date. And then we're going to try to have our panelists kind of answer as much as they can and try to go through all these questions. But first question we have, I'm talking to a new person, and I'm slowly developing feelings. How can I slow myself down until it's the right time? That's a good question.
That is a great question. I can hear the voice of another leader who would say, "Stop talking to them." That would be the answer. But here is, we talked a little bit in the series. Song of Songs has one piece of advice, which is what this question is based on, which is why it's such a good question. It says, don't wake up love until it's time for love to be woken up, right? Like love can be, here's the deal, love can be woken up really young, really early, and then you have nothing to use it with except you could get hurt. or you could hurt other people, or you could use other people, or you could get used. And so this is a great question. And I think there is a piece to that is very simple, of slow down the conversations that you're having with this person. Especially if you're trying to slow it down, slow down the conversations. Have an intentional conversation with them and say, hey, I think we need to slow down here. There's plenty of times that I had to do that I had to tell somebody, hey, let's slow down. We're not ready for this. And I think that's a wise, appropriate. I would love to hear from y'all, though.
I would just add, in the season of life that you all are in, the best thing that you can do genuinely in this type of a situation is build friendships. Build friendships. You don't need to, none of you are at the age where you are ready to get married. Unless you are an adult in this room, you're not ready to get married. And so Josh preached a great message this whole last month. So keep your hearts guarded and build friendships so that your heart stays guarded. I loved what you said about slowing down the conversation. Just keep Jesus the center of your heart and keep Jesus the center of your relationship, friendship, so nothing gets mixed and everybody's safe on both sides.
And I would say practically, it's really easy to have the best intentions on a Wednesday night when you're at church, but when you've had a rough day and you're lonely is often when we make poor choices. And so bringing some people in that can hold you accountable, and probably not your closest friends, because they will often be the ones like, oh, did he see you? Did you talk to him? Did you? Try to not have all of those conversations, because all that's going to do is fuel your heart even more. But maybe having a parent or an older sibling or an aunt or a Vox leader that you can say, hey, I'm actually really like this person, but I'm trying to slow things down, and just bringing someone else into the mix can often be enough to kind of help you stay true to your intentions.
Yeah, I would just second all of that, and also make sure you're on the same page with them as well, as far as taking it slow. I know with me and my wife, when we met, we were clear what we wanted at the time. Obviously, we both were at an age where we wanted to get married. You guys aren't, obviously, but make it clear to them that you are on whatever you're wanting to take it slow and just be friends. Build that friendship with them, and just see where that goes. Yeah.
Those are some great answers. And as we continue on with the questions, there's going to be some much more deeper questions. And just as Josh mentioned last week, there's grace in this place. There's no shame. There's no condemnation. These questions are anonymous, and so we don't want you guys to feel like you have to hide things that have happened. But we want to be able to just continue to give you guys wisdom in this season, because it is something that the world is giving you all these ideas about what you should do, but they're not biblical, and that's what we want to really tackle. And so the next question we actually have. A really interesting question that I was even thinking about for since we first got it. So if you get married and have sex with the person you married, then you get a divorce. Would that sex you had with your ex-wife be a sin, or would it not count? So we have marriage, divorce, and then what does that mean?
If you get married, you should have sex. So if that's a whole different conversation. But if you get married, the question was if you get married and if you have sex. But if you get married, you will have sex. I mean,
Some of them are so
that happens
uncomfortable
in
with that
marriage.
concept.
Just throwing that out there. That
You
does
just
happen
broke
in
them.
marriage. Sorry, I broke them. So when you get married and you have sex, you're having sex in the confines of marriage, which is the biblical boundaries that the Bible gives us. That is not sin. So if there is a divorce, which should never be your intention, you never want to go into marriage with that concept, and I don't think that anyone does. I know that divorce happens. Unfortunately, it happens more often than anybody would like. But just because there's a divorce after marriage, it doesn't make that sin or that sexual relationship with your husband or wife, that would not be counted as sin. The Bible actually says that God hates divorce, but I believe God hates divorce because divorce hurts people. It's a covenant that's broken, and it breaks hearts, and it breaks family. Many of you understand that. Maybe you are a product of that. Your family, your parents have been divorced. My parents got divorced when I was 1, so I get that. But just because the sex happened in the marriage, if the marriage didn't last for whatever reason, the sex would not be sin. But good, interesting question. Something you've pondered, obviously.
Yeah, I want to piggyback because exactly what you're saying. It's not the sex inside of the marriage that the Bible had an issue with. It's the divorce.
Right.
Jesus actually. So it was pretty common where ancient Israel and even Rome, and so at the time that the Bible is written, it's a very like male-centered society, which meant that men had more power. And so like a woman in most cultures couldn't initiate divorce, but guys could. And so one of the things that would happen often is a guy would get bored of his wife and then he would divorce her. And it was completely legal and it was completely normal, and it's today completely legal and completely normal for a guy to divorce his wife for any reason whatsoever. And Jesus actually called that out. And he said, hey, I don't care if that divorce is legal, you're cheating on your wife if you do that. That's what Jesus said. And his disciples were so shocked by that. They were like, Jesus, that's hard. That seems like nobody should ever get married if that's true. And Jesus like, yeah, some people should stay single forever. What? Literally, that was Jesus' response. Like, hey, if you find the concept of marrying somebody for life difficult, then you shouldn't marry. That was Jesus's. He dropped that bomb on his disciples, and his disciples, like the most committed Jesus follower peoples of all times, were like, I don't know about that one. But that's a real thing. That's how much Jesus was against divorce. And so it's not on that side. It's on the other side. Because again, like you said, and I just want to drive that, like divorce hurts people. It really does. It really does. And God hates that. So.
Which is why as Christians, if your decision is to follow Jesus and that's our hope, you want to live for Jesus for your entire life, then you want to marry somebody who wants to live for Jesus for their entire life and keep Jesus the center. Because if you don't, which we may get into that may be a question, it's just going to cause issues. We won't get into all of that right now, but in the book of Deuteronomy, and I won't get into all the details of the historical part of it, but they would actually, the Israelites, when they captured some land, and the men were picking their wives, and they were allowed to take. You have about a month to decide if you want to keep her or not. If not, you can let her go. It's I forget which chapter in Deuteronomy, but it's sad to think like that people are thrown away by like that. But just so you know, as Christians, that's not the heart of God. The heart of God is for us to till death do us part. Let's all love Jesus until death do us part. We just live in a broken, fallen world, and things happen.
Go ahead and move on to the next. Is it okay to cuddle, kiss, be physically affectionate while dating before marriage? What are your thoughts?
Oh, it is not. All right, listen. In the Lord's Prayer, what does it say? He says, if we ask, rescue, keep us from temptation, right? What do all of those things lead to? Let's be honest, right? If you're putting yourself in that situation, whether you are thinking in your heart of hearts and you've promised yourself, you've promised your parents, nothing's gonna happen, don't risk it. Do not put yourself in that situation. I would say that. No matter how old you are, even if you're in your later on in life when you are engaged to someone, keep that stuff sacred. Okay? I would encourage you guys to keep all of that, even kissing. I think it's amazing. I know Josh shared how he didn't kiss his wife until they got married. That's amazing to me. I think that's an awesome thing, right? That's what you said, right?
It wasn't, but
what'd you say?
I only have ever kissed my wife.
Oh,
but
yeah. He only had ever kissed his wife, but not cuddling in the bed, right? Exactly. So, but all right, let's move on. So, don't put yourself in that situation. Is all I'm saying. Temptation leads to sin, so why risk it?
Yeah, I think there's a piece where one, obviously, like, we recognize, like, hey, there's part of a relationship that is physical, right? Like, that's part of the natural appeal that God built into humans, right? So there's a physical piece. It's a good thing to want to connect with somebody. That's part of the deal. The other side of it is being wise and guarded. And I think some of it is cultural. I think some of it is personal. I'll give you a good example. Like I don't kiss people, but when we go to Colombia and everybody just is kissing you on the cheek, like I was like, oh, this is weird. This is different. But that's like a pretty normal thing. There's actually a verse in the Bible that says, hey, when you go to church, make sure you kiss everybody. And you read that and you're like, whoa, 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 hold up.
The holy kiss.
Hold up. But part of it is cultural, right? So we have to understand that there's a cultural part of what physical touch looks like. The other part is personal. And I remember I remember when I was in high school, I had a friend, he was dating a girl, and really good homeschooled kid, grew up Christian his whole life. This was his first girlfriend ever. And I remember having a conversation where he came back sweating. Like he was so distraught. And he was like, bro, I just held the girl's hand. And I don't know if I can do that again. And I was like, you probably should chill. You probably should. I feel like holding hands is a little too much for you, bro. There's a lot of motion for hand holding. So I think there's a piece where you also have to understand, let me be honest and use a word that's going to make everybody uncomfortable. Arousal is probably, thanks Lloyd, arousal is probably the point in which the personal should be a trigger or a warning to you that goes, okay, this has gone beyond what is physical and acceptable into what is dangerous. Does that make sense? All right. I'm just trying to shoot straight here on that.
I love that, also to tag on that, what Andrew brought up at the very beginning. Jesus, when his disciples said, teach us to pray, one of the things Jesus said is, he made it a prayer, lead us not into temptation. So it's a cry to God to lead us not into temptation, but we need to do our part and not open the door for temptation. And we say this all the time, being tempted with something isn't a sin, but when you give into the temptation, that's when it becomes sin. And if you keep playing with fire, I think it was Kurt said it earlier, if you play with fire, don't kid yourself that you're not going to get burned. You got to be wise. Joshua preached about it last week, that the scripture that says, if you are a Christian, there should not be even a hint of sexual immorality. And so as teenagers who are not yet ready to get married, because you're not there yet. You're not old enough. You're still in school. You will get there. But the best thing that you can do is guard your heart, guard your bodies, and wait for the person that you're going to get married to. And then you have fun when you get married. But just guard yourself now so that you're not having any regrets later. If you're putting yourself into all this temptation, it's just going to lead to the wrong things. It's normal to want to hold a hand and hug. We're not stupid up here. We all know that. We get that you want to be hugged, you don't want to cuddle, and it's all those things are. It's good. It feels good. It's mushy gushy. All the feelings. I understand that, but all we're saying, this isn't about a legalistic thing. This isn't about don't or else you're in sin. You know, it's not like you're holding your boyfriend or girlfriend's hand and God's going, oh, you disgust me. But we don't want you to see it like that. It's that God gives us boundaries in His Word because He cares about you and He knows how He designed us. It is normal to be attracted to the opposite sex. That's the way our bodies are designed. We're designed that way. But we're also given with the Holy Spirit's power, the ability to have self-control, to be patient because love is patient, to be patient until we are ready for that season of life, and then to open that door. So that's where that goes.
All right. So with our next question, and I think it would even be beneficial for a lot of times when I hear this question, I think a lot of people want specifics. Sure. And so I think it'd be okay to lay out some specific things because we always look at what the Bible says and we're like, well, the Bible doesn't say this exactly. But this question is, what actually counts as sexual sin?
It's a great question. It's a great question. Here's the
Very common.
now, but we'll get into some specifics. But let me do the thing that nobody wants me to do from the get-go, which is generic. So there's a book that came out last year, and the book is about AI sex, robot sex, virtual reality porn, and some of these other things. Now, here's what's really wild about that, is that 15 years ago, that was not on anybody's list, right? Like nobody was like making a list and it was like, all right, sexual sin is like, but the reality is that within the next decade and even now, there's already place for this, right? Like that was actually the largest porn company in the world, was one of the biggest investors in virtual reality, because they knew that if they could get you into that space, you would be hooked, right? So let me just say this. What is sexual sin? What counts as sexual sin? There will always be new temptation. There will always be, we can share some things tonight, and there's still probably when you're raising kids, you're going to have a conversation with kids, and you're going to be like, that was not a thing when I was growing up. Because and here's the deal. It's not that the devil is creative or crafty. He's taking old things and remixing them, right? He's not doing anything new. He's taking sex and he's trying to distort it. He's just taking the human body, trying to wreck it. He's just taking these things. So he's not doing anything creative or crafty or new, but he's going to find different ways to make that happen. All right, so that's the generic.
Absolutely need it though.
Yeah. All right, so you guys jump in. Okay, I'll start. So let me say, if it isn't clear, the pornography, the use of, the practice of, participation in is sexual sin. I also think, and you're going to use different words for this, but fooling around with another person. The Bible talks about that there are special parts of our body that we keep protected for a purpose. And quite often, those are the places that get touched, right? So there are areas that your mind is pulling towards. That's sexual sin, right? Maybe I should be more clear, right? The chest, the lower regions, right? There are parts of the body that the Bible says, hey, these are protected, and they are to be protected. And so I would say that touching those is part of that. I think lust in the form of objectifying a person is sexual sin. I think oftentimes, and I talked a little bit about it last week, but there's people who they've performed sexual acts that wasn't technically intercourse, but that's sexual sin. So I think that one thing I will clarify, and then I'll turn it over. One thing I do want to clarify is it's so important to understand that being raped, being molested, being sexually moved upon is not sin. Like, that's so important for some people in this room to hear. That's not sin. Like, that was not what that is at all. Someone sinned egregiously to you, against you. So, I said a lot on this.
It's sin from the person who did that. It is disgusting sin. If you've been taken advantage of in any way by someone, you were molested or raped or whatever, against your will. That is sin on their part, not on your part. That's what he's saying. And we want to make that clear because there's no judgment on you. And I want to reiterate what we all said at the beginning. We're really proud of you guys for asking these questions. We want you to be bold. Nothing is off limits here because we want you to get answers because you need them, because maybe you're not asking them in other places. And all we're trying to do is, from whether it's our life experience or most importantly, the Word of God, we're trying to give you the best wisdom and advice that we can. What counts as sexual sin? Anything, Josh used the word arousal earlier. Anything that arouses you or excites you sexually, anything that you're doing with your boyfriend or girlfriend that is stirring you up, that's putting a temptation in your mind. And when you are in that place, because you are teenagers, you literally there's a part of your brain that is not yet developed. I'm being really real here, okay? Listen to me. There's a part of your brain, it's part of your frontal lobe that is not yet developed. It probably won't be fully developed until the ages of between 19 and sometimes up to 25. That's legit. There's a part of your brain that is not yet developed. So what happens is when you put yourself in temptation and you start kissing, it's one thing. Listen, if you're in a friendship and you hug somebody goodbye, listen, we're not hugging, it's a sin. But when you hug, okay, that's different. You know what I'm saying? There's a different kind of hug, and then your hands are going a little lower, a little higher, a little front, a little back, all the things. Okay, that's not safety zone. I'm just being real with you, okay? You kiss somebody on the forehead, you kiss them on the cheek. Hey, it's been so great to spend this time with you. A kiss on the cheek, okay, that's sexual sin. But you start putting your lips on somebody else's lips, and then the mouth opens and the tongue start touching. Don't tell me things aren't going to get fired up. You want real? I'll be real. Okay, that's what's happening. You're starting to get aroused, and we're just telling you. You can listen. I know this is awkward, and some of you are laughing, and I don't care. But I want you to know. I know this is awkward, but we're not giving you information that isn't true. And probably many of you in here have experienced those things. And all we're trying to do is say, hey, the best advice we could give you is, if you've done it, ask God, forgive me. I don't want to cross those lines because I want to keep myself pure from this day forward for the person I'm going to marry, the person I'm going to stand across that aisle with and say I do. But if you're now in a relationship and you're all cuddly and you're rubbing up each other and you're kissing and you're going places and you're laying on top of each other and in other directions and all the things, you're opening the door for sexual sin, and that counts as sexual sin. Is that fair?
And I would say really simply, when in doubt, don't.
Yes.
When in doubt, don't. You're very rarely going to regret being too conservative, but will often regret going too far. So when in doubt, stop.
Yeah.
Find the necessary counsel, all of that stuff, set the necessary boundaries. But I want this refrain to be in your head that the Holy Spirit can remind you of later. When in doubt, don't.
Yeah. And be careful not to get in the habit of asking the question if you are in a relationship. Because if you're coming at it, if you go into a relationship thinking, okay, how far is too far? Let me go as far as we can go. If it's not, let me just take it to the line. If you're thinking that now, I promise you're going to regret it later. And because you don't want to have to go into your marriage someday with a bunch of sexual sin and baggage, you're just not. So if you can protect yourself as best you can, and again, if you've crossed those lines, we're not throwing rocks at you. Nobody up here is sinless, okay? But we're just saying from a biblical standpoint, and to do things to honor the Lord and to set you up for the best life possible. Guard your hearts, guard your bodies, and when in doubt, Jesus, help me.
Absolutely. And one thing I will add to that before we jump to the next question, because I'm glad, Josh, you mentioned the AI, because for some of you guys, the temptation may be in relationships, but there may be some people in this room that are like, well, I've not been in a relationship, so I'm free from it, right? But there's still the chat AI, where people can engage with fictional characters because they're coming maybe from a lonely place and they don't want the physical, but they want the emotional. There is pornography, the other one for the girls in the room, book talk. Be very careful of the books that are being put out right now. And when I say books, I'm talking about like what people made fun of, like 50 Shades of Grey for the older women that were reading it, and it's like, oh, like these are like novels with like spicy stuff in it. But the amount of books that I know you girls are also that are like showing up like in front of you girls as well, because I know there's a lot of readers that love reading books in here, but the amount of books that I've seen that for young adults that you guys are reading, there's like all these books that I think have some content in it, and I'm just saying that also counts, because it can lead you, even if it's not a physical, it's still, if it's causing an emotion, it's something you have to really guard your heart from. And I just had to say that because sometimes it's not addressed, and sometimes when people don't address it, they're like, oh, I'm free. No, you're not free. We also have temptations, whether you're single or in a relationship, so really guard your heart in that.
Girls, if you like to read and you need some like really good Christian fiction, come find me. I've got plenty. I will give you stuff, great, awesome books that aren't going to lead you into temptation. So that's one thing. And on the heels of that too, this is why you guys need to be so careful. And Josh did a fantastic job last week of talking about what you're putting before your eyes. Because if you're watching a bunch of videos, whether it's on music videos on YouTube, or you're watching people on TikTok, and certain people who are dancing and they hardly have any clothes on, and all of those things, whether you're a guy or you're a girl, you're putting garbage in front of yourself. What you're going to feed yourself on is what's going to fuel you. So be mindful of that.
And I would say to that, some of that isn't even just explicit content. If you're trying to be content in your singleness and wait in the Lord, but all you're watching are rom-coms and different romance books and things like that, it's real hard to stay content when that's all that you're consuming. And so be careful, even about things that aren't necessarily sinful, doesn't mean that it's actually good for you and purposeful for helping you live the way that you want to live and how God is calling us to live.
And I'm actually going to have that lead us to a question I saw down below for some of the people in here that are in a single season. But this question says, how can I guard my heart in the single season, and how can I know when I'm ready to enter in a season of dating?
All right, so I will start by addressing sometimes an assumption or a perspective that can often go under these kinds of questions. I'm not saying that this person has it. But I think sometimes we can see a season of singleness or a life of singleness, because there are in the scripture, Paul actually calls people, says that I wish that some of you would stay single because you can live a life of absolute purpose and dedication to the Lord and to his kingdom. And so that is a way to live the abundant life of Christ. Some of us will get married and have children, and others will stay single potentially for the rest of their lives. And sometimes the way that we see that, or we hear about a season of singleness or a life of singleness, is like, it's the desert I have to get through before I hit the promised land, when actually singleness is really beautiful. And it has its challenges and its hard parts, just like marriage and having children does. But I just want you to know that as a person who has been single my entire life, my life is full and beautiful and abundant only because of the work of the Lord. And I get to experience things with him that I would not have if I were married, just in the same way that married people experience things with the Lord differently. And so I just want you to know that like that season of singleness is really beautiful and can help you to know the Lord in ways that you would never know otherwise, to know who he's called you to be, who he's created you to be, to really dedicate your life to things that matter. And I promise you that if you will take that seriously, there will be deep and good and lasting fruit in your life because of it. That doesn't mean that you have to pretend like you don't want to date anyone or you don't get lonely sometimes or anything like that. You're allowed to hold both, that like, I want this thing, but I'm also going to wait and I'm going to pursue singleness. And so I would say that if you're trying to stay single for a season and just wait on the Lord's timing, really think about taking advantage of the time that you have. Spend time going out and finding out what you're good at, finding what you're passionate about, finding out the ways that the Lord has designed you specifically and how you can be of service both to him, to his house, to the community, to your family, because this is a time of purpose. I would also say guard your heart, because again, if all you're consuming is romance stuff and all that you're looking at and listening to is all about love, it's going to be really, really difficult. Let your friends and the people around you know your intentions, because they are going to be the ones that help you either stay that course or pull you the other way. And if your friends can't understand that, I will say this is something that is worth it to really choose your friends wisely around whether they're going to help me become the person that I want to be. And so that's what I would say.
I would just sort of piggyback off what Rebecca was saying. Dive in with your relationship with Jesus. Like, I remember right after I got out of a serious relationship with a girl, because we realized, I had just given my life to Christ, and she wasn't about that. She wasn't trying to do that. And I realized we have to end this. And I remember that time, it was few years before I met my wife. Those were some of the best years with God. I got closer to God during that time than I ever imagined I could. And I just remember him revealing so many things to me, making it clear who I wanted to marry, the type of person I wanted to marry one day, making it clear how important it was that I repent for any past sins I did, and I cleanse myself of anything I did. God did so much for me in that time because I was all in for him. And I still am, of course. But during that time where it was a time where I didn't know what to do, because I had dated this girl for a long time, and I was used to being a boyfriend, having a girlfriend. I didn't know what to do as a single person, really, because we dated for a while. And I just remember that time being a time where God sort of revealed who I am to myself as well. He revealed that, no, you are a child, you are my child, your identity is found in me. You don't need this other person. But I also realized too, like, I still wanted another person. I did, but there was no rush. I wasn't worried I was going to get too old before I met my wife. I wasn't worried about all of that. I trusted God fully with it. And I realized it's all in his timing. I can't control what another person feels, so I'm gonna wait for God. I'm gonna let him reveal things to me, and I'm gonna let him show me who I'm supposed to marry. I'm gonna let him show me the type of marriage I'm supposed to have, and all of that stuff. And God can do so much if you would just dive all in. By diving in, I mean everything, every aspect of your life, right? Like there's no compromise. Nothing that the world says is gonna change you. Nothing. You're just ready to live. You're saying, God, use me. However you want to do it, reveal it to me, and he will. So,
At 14, I was the wisest high school freshman that has ever existed. And I remember when my friends were dating, I was not allowed to date at 14, but I told all of my friends, y'all are idiots. None of you are ready to date. By the time I was 16, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm ready. And I want to tell you a couple of things that that made me unready. One, if you have an addiction of any sort in your life, I don't think you're ready. Because quite often what we think is, well, I'll go into this relationship and they'll make me better. Don't put that responsibility on somebody else. So if you have a substance addiction, you have a pornography addiction, you have a sexual addiction, don't go into a relationship. Let me piggyback off of that. I think another huge red flag for you is, can I have normal friendships with the opposite sex that are not romantic? Because if every relationship I have is romantic, I'm not ready for any relationship. Does that make sense? Like if every girl is attractive to you, homie, you're not ready. So that's a red flag. I'll say this. If you're violent, if you have rage, you have no control, I don't think you're ready. If you can't be peaceful, I think you're dangerous. I don't think you're ready. I don't think so here's this. This is really crazy. I know a marriage counselor that when he sits down with a couple who's about to get married, so for their premarital, they sit down, he goes, all right, y'all are engaged, you wild lovebirds. Tell me, what do you love about each other? And he said 9 times out of 10, the couple will go, oh my gosh, I love the way she makes me feel, or I love the way he makes me feel. And he responds and says, the coldest thing I've ever heard in my life. He's like, oh, you don't love them, you just love the way they make you feel. See, because love is about another person, not about you. So I'll say this. If you're going into a relationship and you're thinking about how they can make you feel and what you can get out of this, you're not ready for a relationship. I think those would be a couple guarding red flags. I think if your relationship with the Lord, like they just said, if your relationship with the Lord is not solid, what's really tough is trying to balance a growing relationship with another person and trying to grow with the Lord. That's usually pretty tricky for people. So I would say all of those are some flags that pop into my head right now. And I'm sure there are more, but here, let me say this. I'm really grateful for my parents because they were people that in my life I could go, hey, do you think I'm ready to date? And for years and years and years, they told me no. And I had leaders in my life that I could go, hey, do you think I'm ready to date? That could speak into my life. That's kind of a wild thought. You're like, no, it's me. I'm in love. I want to date. Like, I don't need. But, like, it might be beneficial to you to ask some people. Like, hey, do you think I'm ready to date? And listen, if all of your friends are like, nah, bro, you trash, then listen to them. They might have some wisdom on that. You might not be ready.
Can I say something real quick? I want to say something first to the girls. Well, no, let me start with the guys. First, I'll say this to the guys. You know, I have my tag group, all of our tag groups here, we love our tag people. And I've got a group of tag girls that I love. I love their hearts. I love them very much. And we have had lots of conversation about boys. And I will say, guys in this room, you've got some great girls in this youth ministry who are saying, when they talk about the dream guy that they want to marry, they want somebody who loves Jesus. They're asking, where are the guys who love Jesus, who are patient, who are going to be respectful, and the list goes on. And I'm saying, there's champions. They're in here. They're being groomed. They're in here. They're coming. But I'm letting you know that there are girls that are saying, I want a guy that I can follow, that I can respect, that I will be able to honor because of the type of personality that he has. I can trust him because of his character. Do they want him to, they're not going, he's got to have a hot bod and he's got to, do they want him to be cute and all the things? Sure, that's in there somewhere, but that's not at the top of the list. There are other things, so just remember that. They want to respect you. To the girls in the room, listen to me. A lot of you girls, not all of you, some of you girls, you have great fathers, and some of you in this room, you do not. I didn't have a good father growing up. I won't get into my life story, but I didn't. And so I know the desire. When you have a father wound, girls, when you have a father wound, you want a guy to fix that. You want a guy to fill that. And you've got to be really careful that in this season of your life, the one that's filling that is Jesus. Because if you fall in love with Jesus and you allow him to fill that father wound, I'm telling you, you'll keep yourself guarded. Guys, we just sang a song. You heard Brandon Lake and Maverick City sang a song, Fresh Fire. You know, I want to burn for you. Give me a fresh fire. I want to burn for you. I want to be a man on fire so I can burn for you. If you have that kind of heart, I'm telling you, the Lord's going to send you a godly girl. He's going to give you the godly girl that you're going to find her. If that's your desire, you will find her someday. She may already be in your life. She may not. I don't know. And vice versa. But listen, as Rebecca said, put your gaze on Jesus. Put your focus on the Lord. Put your nose in the Bible. Make the best of friends. Enjoy the season of life. And keep everything else guarded.
That's good. Before we move into the next question, one thing I also wanted to add to the single young man or the single young lady in this room, when you see all your friends in relationships, there is the lie that the enemy will try to put in your head that says something's wrong with you because all your friends are in relationships and you're not. And I just wanted to address that is a lie. That is not of God. There's nothing wrong with you. If you have high standards, and if you're like, hey, I want to be with someone who is on fire for the Lord as I am, that's great. And don't allow the world or the relationships around you to make you feel like you should lower your standards because everyone else around you seems like they're having a good time. And that applies to both, whether you're a girl or you're a guy in this room. Stay pursuing the Lord and don't allow that lie to get to you because that is something that the enemy will try to tempt you to make you think that that's what you need, as Dina talked about. Like you need to fill yourself with something. Maybe be in a relationship. Maybe lower your standards. Be happy like everyone else. But that's not the heart of God. He wants you to pursue him with everything, and he says that he will give you the desires of your heart when they're aligned with his, and his ways are so much better than our ways. But Dina, there's something you mentioned about when it comes to like when we're looking to people, what we should look for in other people. But this is a really interesting question, and I think this is something that often gets popped up in our conversations a lot. How can I bring, and I in this will be applied in both ways. How can I bring my boyfriend or girlfriend closer to God? And if I want to marry them in the future so we can have a successful marriage together?
So I would just say, how can I bring my boyfriend closer to God? It's not really your responsibility. That's on them. Now, it is your responsibility to be a follower of Christ around them, to display what it looks like to be Jesus with skin on, right? To be like Christ, right? That's your job, but it's not your job to make their relationship with Jesus good, like to make them grow closer to Jesus. They can only do that themselves. So putting pressure on yourself like that, it's not gonna really. You're not going to be able to do it yourself. All right, you're not going to be able to bring them closer to God. They can only do that. You can only do what God has made you to do, and that's display an example of Christ in their life. Now, I'm not saying, and I think this comes with nuances too, as far as should you stay with them, should you not? It depends. Is this person somebody who is hindering your relationship with Jesus? Are they thinking, oh, I'm not into that. I'm never going to believe in God. I'm never going to want a relationship with Christ. Should you stay with them then? I mean, probably not, okay? Definitely not, really.